Good evening. I guess you can hear me? I can hear my voice echoing alarmingly. Good evening, and first of all, we would like to apologize for the delay. Catherine Cusset was detained by ICE or something on the way in, and so someone had to come up with a QR code or something because of the advanced state-of-the-art security here at Columbia University. My name is Elisabeth Ladenson. I teach in the French department, and it is my great pleasure to welcome here this evening Catherine Cusset, who is a prominent French author and recovered academic who has, remarkably enough, not one but two doctoral degrees, one from Paris 7 and one from Yale, where she also taught. So both of her theses were on 18th century libertine literature, one on the Marquis de Sade, and she taught at French literature, 18th century French literature at Yale for a number of years before realizing that writing was a more interesting way to spend one's time. She lived in the US, notably in New York, for some 30 years before moving back to Paris full-time and just pretty recently, right? Yes?
4 years.
4 years ago, okay. She's the author of some 16 novels. I'm not entirely, do you know how many books you've written?
No.
Because I couldn't figure it out. Okay, I'm glad. Neither of us knows how many books she has published, but it's a lot. A number of them translated into English, including Le Problème avec Jane, which was first published in French in France in 1999, and then by Simon & Schuster as The Story of Jane in 2001, which is a whodunit set in a truly page-turning and fascinating whodunit set in a thinly disguised Yale French department, and also The Life of David Hockney, a novel published by the Other Press in 2019 after being published in France. I would also mention, so a number of her works have provocative subjects and titles such as Jouir, La haine de la famille, and Confession d'une radine, which I believe have not been translated, but were tremendously successful in French. She's also the author of a book called L'autre qu'on adorait, published in 2016, a finalist for the Goncourt Prize and recipient of 4 other prizes, which is partly set in an even more thinly disguised Columbia French department.
Not disguised at all.
Not disguised, okay, not disguised at all. So we're here today to discuss her two recent works, The Life of David Hockney, a novel, and Ma Vie avec Marcel Proust, published in this year, which is a personal take on Proust. And I will just basically turn things over to Catherine Cusset. Thank you so much for being here.
Just turning it to me.
No, I can ask you lots of questions. I just thought maybe you'd want to.
I feel really bad now because first they didn't let me in at the entrance because I didn't have a QR code. And then I was with a friend who came all the way from downtown, and I told her, I swear, I am not going to let you there. And she's there, and I feel very bad because she made the effort to come, and she registered but didn't get the QR code. So I feel actually terrible. That I promised that I would. I'm a very loyal person, so when I tell someone, "Don't worry, I'm going to come and rescue you," and then whoop, I forget about her. I feel very, very, very bad. But apparently there is nothing to do because security here is incredibly strict. So
anyway. I'd like to apologize on behalf of Columbia University for this unfortunate.
So I will. So the topic of this conversation. Thank you, Elisabeth, for your presentation, because my mind was still at the entrance of Columbia. The topic is how can Proust and Hockney lift your spirits? And I thought you were going to ask me questions.
I am going to ask you questions. I thought I would give you a chance to just talk before. I'll start asking you questions right now if you like.
So maybe I'm going to speak first about the paradoxical title, of course. It's paradoxical comparison. A lot of people in the recent days have asked me, what do they have in common, Proust and Hockney?
Well, they're both gay men, for one thing.
Yes, one thing, but I'm just going to say a few words first about their difference. Well, one was born in 1871 and died in 1922. Am I right, Antoine? Yes. You're going to be my fact checker today. And the other one was born in 1937, and as you know, is still alive today. So already there's a difference of a time period. One was born in a bourgeois and fairly rich family and didn't have to work for a living. And even though he was in a family, his father worked, and his brother, Proust's brother, was a doctor, and his parents would have liked him to work. So it's not like he did go to school and he studied, and he at some point got a job as a librarian. But I think he got also a lot of sick leaves, right? And it didn't really work. While David Hockney was born in a pretty poor family. He had 4 siblings in a small town in the north of England, and he became an artist in that sense. He didn't work for a living. I mean, not the typical kind of work, but he really always wanted to become an artist, and that was not an option. His parents, for when he grew up, actually, he didn't know what an artist was. An artist was someone who would make posters for the cinema, or would compose Christmas cards, and then on Sunday, when you still had a little time, you could do something for yourself. That was nice. So he had absolutely no idea that you could actually make your work artist, do exactly what you wanted and make money with it. So it came to him as quite a big surprise. So of course, very, very different social status. And then the third very big difference, which also makes the comparison quite paradoxical, is that David Hockney is what we could call an easy painter. His work is very accessible. Anyone who is seeing his work understands it immediately, and it's actually very pleasing, and it's a work that is immediately talking to you, and you're not forced to like it, but it's very easy access. Well, as we know, Proust is considered, rightly or not, a difficult writer, and his work is definitely not offering the same easy access into it. Well, that was a little introduction about the difference between Proust and... I'm sure there are other differences between them.
So what do they have in common?
What do they have in common?
They're both gay men, for one thing.
Yeah, and it's yeah, I can talk. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to get into this comparison. Of course, we're going to talk about their work, but in terms of homosexuality, it's a very important thing for both of them, and they both represented it in their work. And for both of them, it was also actually England in the... he was born in 37, so it's the second half of the 20th century, was not exactly easier than France in the 19th century. It was not, in England, there was a law that was valid until 1957, which made homosexuality a crime, punished penally. And for Proust, at the time of Proust, it's very intimidating for me to speak in front of Antoine Compagnon, because he knows everything so much better than I do. And thank you for being here. Very, very flattered. And so in the time of Proust, it was, it's of course, it's not something that was publicly done. And for Proust, it was actually very important because he, in 18, when he was, I can't remember the date. When was the duel with Jean Lorrain? 1896, maybe? 1896, something like this. And so there was this journalist who published an article in which there was a veiled allusion to Proust's relationship with the son of Alphonse Daudet, the writer Alphonse Daudet, Lucien Daudet, about their particular friendship. Proust didn't take it lightly.
The journalist in question was himself a flamboyant homosexual also,
Okay.
which is perhaps relevant.
So it provoked him into a duel, that's how you say, and with a I don't know these words in English. I absolutely never use them. Pistols. With pistols, and you know it's written in every biography of Proust. But I must say, thinking about it, I mean, try to imagine. It's there is a risk, right? It's not. It's not exactly anecdotal or neutral. You take your pistol and you walk 20 steps, and then you turn and you shoot. I heard someone say that, oh, they didn't really shoot, they shot in the air. But no, they shot, no? I mean, it was real shooting. Well, there was a risk, right? I mean, basically, he's risking. They don't aim at each other? I mean, how do we know that?
Because it's ritual.
It's a ritual. It seems, I don't know, it seems like a risk. It seems like it's putting something at risk to defend the honor of the name. So in Search of Lost Time, you know that the narrator is a heterosexual, but how did you make it? I was just saying how bad I felt. Okay, great. Very, very, very happy. Very good. Now I feel better. But lots of characters in his book are homosexual, and actually at the end, all of them are basically homosexual. But the main character, one of the main characters, is the Baron de Charlus. And when Proust published the first volume of Search of Lost Time, Du côté de chez Swann, he was very aware of the risk he was taking in representing that character, and immediately informed his publisher, warned the publisher that he had a very daring character, and so he wanted them to know that he was hoping it wouldn't be a problem for the publication. And Hockney, on his part, grew up in a town where there was absolutely no homosexual. He just had no idea what it was. His parents were Methodist, and really for them, homosexuality was a crime punished by God. So he discovered it when he was a student. He probably discovered it before, but he discovered it openly when he was in the school, the Royal Academy of Art in London. And there was an American there who was openly gay. And that was the first time he saw someone who was openly gay. And that's really what gave him the desire to go to the States. And also, that American guy, Mark, had brought a magazine called Physique Pictorial, which was a magazine published in Los Angeles with a lot of models, with big muscles and not totally naked, but just underwear. And David Hockney was fascinated by these models, and this gave him the desire to go to Los Angeles. So first, when he went to New York, the first time he went to New York was in 37, 57, I think in 61, when he was 24 years old. And that's when he had a first boyfriend, and then he immediately put homosexuality into his paintings. But not quite immediately, actually. This is very interesting because when David Hockney was accepted at the Royal Academy of Art, he was accepted on his talent and was totally amazing. And until then, he had only painted figurative painting. He's at a school, and then there are very few students. I think it's about 15 students. And one of the students says that obviously you do not paint like Monet after Pollock. It's clear. And David Hockney took it very personally. It means you do not paint figurative once abstract art has started. And if you do, you belong to the past. And you completely lose. So he was very aware of this and very afraid. And his first work that he did at the Royal Academy of Art was actually a drawing of a skeleton. It was figurative, but not too figurative. There was some, it was a very good drawing, and in a way, a skeleton was not quite alive, right? So it was a little bit, there was a kind of abstraction inherent to it. And then, because he didn't want the other students to lose their consideration for him and not have any esteem for him, he started painting abstract, because that's what you have to do. And for 1 year, he only painted abstract. And you know what? From that year, there is no painting left. And he was 22 years old, 23, I suppose, 23. And he had this friend, Oi. Sorry, Oi. I can't believe the name is going to escape me. It's going to come back. I'm a little tired.
A friend. I mean,
this is American. American GI who got a fellowship to study art in England. It's horrible. I know his name.
Perhaps the name doesn't matter that much.
Doesn't matter, but it's irritating. And that friend talked to him and told him something that I think it's a very important thing. And I actually wanted to give this as a title to my book. He told him, you don't have to be a contemporary writer, contemporary artist. You don't have to try to be contemporary. Why? Because you live in your time. You are contemporary. So don't try to be contemporary. Paint what matters to you. And I think this is actually a very strong common point between Proust and Hockney. I think they really painted and wrote not what was fashionable, but what mattered to them. And so this is a time when Hockney listened to that advice, and not quite immediately, he started painting. He was really afraid of being perceived as a figurative painter because it meant a Sunday painter. It meant nobody. So he was very careful at the beginning. He painted a tea box. He painted some vegetable. He painted shapes that were between figurative and abstract. And little by little, he introduced into his paintings the figure, the human figure, but not quite recognizable at the beginning. And the human part of it entered his painting in another way, not really through the shape, through the figure, but through writing. He wrote words and sentences that he found in different places. Sometimes sentences he found on the door of the public toilets. Sentences he found in the poetry of Whitman or Constantin Cavafy. So it was his code, his way of writing about desire and of putting desire into his painting. And little by little, he really went to the figurative, and I'm sure everybody knows. Actually, you know what? I brought, I thought maybe you wouldn't have it here. So I borrowed from some friends a book. And this way I can show you. So I was telling you, this is the first work he did at the Academy of Art, and you can see the difference with this kind of painting that got him accepted at the Royal Academy of Art, but was still very figurative. And then this was the tea box. And sorry, I'm going to get to better. So you see, it's kind of abstract, right? It's not yet human shape. But he's writing things. He's writing, we, two boys, together clinging. And this is how he's introducing against the human and the figure into his painting. And this one is a painting that he called The Cha-Cha-Cha that was danced in the early hours of 24th March 1961. Very specific title. And I suppose I will talk at some point of how I came to write each of these books. Hockney has published an autobiographical book, which is a transcription of a long interview he gave when he was about 40 years old. And in it, there are lots of anecdotes. And I read the anecdote about that painting, and it was about a friend of his at the Royal Academy of Art. It's a boy called Peter, not the one who was his great love afterwards. And this one was heterosexual, and David was in love with him. And you see, this is a painting of that love. At one day, that guy danced cha-cha-cha in front of him, and that's what he painted. And he has little sentences that I can't read now, but which are really all about desire. So, and then, this one is quite explicit. Do you see what it is? No, do you see what it is? It brings another similarity between Proust and Hockney, and it is humor. I don't know if you see what it is. No. Okay, thank you, Drew. Okay. And then, we'll go to the well-known paintings that he did, the swimming pool and this one. Sorry, it's me, I'm making all this noise with that book. This one is, this is a painting of his lover Peter in the swimming pool of his gallerist. And for that painting, which was quite daring, mostly in England, he got a prize of contemporary art when he was, I think, in his 30s. So yeah, let's go back.
Okay. One question that I have is about Life of David Hockney, a novel, is a title and subtitle in tension with each other. And in the prologue to the Anglophone, to the translation of this, the first sentence is in italics, "This is a novel." And then you go on to say, "All facts are true, but I've imagined feelings, thoughts, and dialogue." And so I am wondering, I mean, there are a lot of biographies do that. I mean, a lot of biographies presented as biographies and not as novels do that. I know that it's also true that the category of novel, roman in France, has a very different valence from what it has in English. But I'm wondering if you could just speak to the generic oddness of this project as being at once a biography and or a I mean, perhaps you don't think of it as being both a biography and a novel, but a life of someone and also life of an actual person and also a novel.
Yeah, actually see a big difference between the biography and the novel. For me, Life of David Hockney is really a novel. I try to explain why. And something I could never have done about Proust. I kind of wondered about it because the book is called My Life with Marcel Proust. I could do whatever I wanted, but it's absolutely not something I could have done about Proust, which would have been impossible. I don't know why, but to try to inhabit the mind of Proust and to be, I don't know, in his bedroom writing Search of Lost Time. Impossible.
Why?
You see, I think my book on Proust is daring because I keep comparing myself to him, with him or whatever, which is somewhat daring and indecent. But I think it would have been much more indecent to try to go inside his mind because he has written everything. I don't see how I could have put myself in his shoes, which I could do with Hockney. So, what is the difference between a novel and a biography? A biography, you write a biography about a life that is worth being told. And usually, what justifies a biography is really the person about whom you write, with this well-known person or has done extraordinary things, and you are telling the facts of that life. And you are saying, yes, but biographers, probably maybe mostly in the States or somewhere else, try to also to get into the mind of the person that they write about. I had the feeling when I wrote Life of David Hockney that I was not really writing about David Hockney. I actually didn't care that it was David Hockney. I wrote about David, and he allowed me to write a book about the trajectory of an artist because I found so many things about him. Because also, first, I was able to identify at some level with the person and with the search. I give an example when I read what gave me the desire to write the book. I think the moment because originally it was a commission, and someone asked me to write 40, 50 pages about his work. And it was an editor in my publishing house, Gallimard, and she wanted a novelist to write, not like an art historian, but personal text about his work. And she was going to publish it for the Beaubourg retrospective in 2017 as an illustrated book. And I don't know if I would do it. The first book I read was the one I mentioned before, which was David Hockney by David Hockney, or is also called My Early Years. And it's a book which is a transcription of this long interview in which David Hockney says lots of things about his childhood and about his youth. And at some point, he describes his passion for cinema, how as a child, his only distraction was going to the movies in Bradford. It was cheap, and he could at least afford one ticket. And then once he was inside the cinema, he had a way of pretending he was walking out with the other people and actually was walking backwards and going back into the cinema. I'm not sure how it worked, but he would stay all day with one ticket. And then one day, he's in the cinema, in the movie theater, and a man sat next to him. And he doesn't describe what happened. And obviously, that's a scene that we can imagine, and that in other books, I don't know if some of you have read The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. There is a very traumatic scene in this book in which a little boy at the movie theater at some point needs to go to the toilet, and he leaves the room, and there's this orange man, the man selling drinks, who tells him, "Come here, I'm going to give you an orange drink, an orange juice," and abuses him. And it's a very, very traumatic scene. Well, David Hockney is 14 in this movie theater. He doesn't describe what happened. He just says, it gave me a lifelong love for cinema. Yes. So I liked the wit of the man. could see he was very witty. He was not politically correct. You know, he's very, he has a real crusade about smoking. You know, he's furious. He left the States almost because of the Clean Air Act in California, because he couldn't smoke everywhere like he used to. He is a great proponent of freedom. And I liked the personality of the man, and then I really, really liked the way the search, the artistic search, well, the success came to him incredibly quickly. It was unbelievable. You know, he's out of the school, he already has a gallerist. By the age of 30, he has an important contemporary prize, and he's selling his work, and he's making a living, and he's able to buy an apartment in London, like 30, 35. So it's like a fairy tale. It's really like a fairy tale. But I was also very curious to understand why, when I looked I didn't know his work, and I looked on the internet, and I saw very different work. You know, we saw the paintings of the swimming pool, the men, the double portraits, and then completely different things. And I was really wondering, how did he go from one period to another? And what I really wanted to write was from the inside, the search of an artist who doesn't know yet. I mean, okay, Hockney got success quickly, but he was not yet David Hockney. I really wanted to write from the inside what it is to be dealing with creation, and to stop at some point the kind of work that brought him success. He abruptly stopped from one day to the next. He didn't get imprisoned by success ever. He suddenly stopped. You know, the gallerist is waiting for these fantastic double portraits which are selling. You know, he was a slow painter, David Hockney. He is. I mean, I don't know. No, nowadays he's painting one painting a day, but when he was young, so you know this double portrait. These portraits, which are magnificent work, were selling like, he would finish one and immediately it was gone. And from one day to the next, he stopped. He stopped, and I wanted to understand. I was totally interested in what it is that prevented him at some point from continuing this work. And I think in his work there is a search for life and for truth, which I find very comparable to the search, to Proust's search.
You said that that what you were interested in was the life of a creator, in terms of that it wasn't specific to David Hockney. Could you have written this book about another artist? And if so,
yeah,
who?
I don't know.
I mean, Vie de Michel-Ange?
No, I don't know. The thing with David Hockney is that I found so much material that I could. It's almost as if I knew him. You know, it's.
Well, you then did know him.
What?
But so you say that you in fact met him for the first time in New York in 2018 after having sent him your novel. How did he respond to the novel?
He read the translation a year later. I mean, actually, when the book came out, it was a bit risky, you know, because I couldn't ask him I couldn't ask him. I couldn't tell him I was writing that book, because he didn't need me at all. He didn't need me to be better known, and he would have wanted to control. So I couldn't ask him, because in all probability he was going to say no, that he didn't want the publication of that book, because it was my vision of his life. I didn't ask. It was my interpretation from everything I read. But I wrote that book exactly the way I wrote the book before about my friend who was a student here, my friend Jérôme, who was a student of Antoine. I wrote these two books exactly the same way, trying to get into the mind of the person, you know, was the character, the hero of my book. And for my friend, of course, I knew part of his life, because he was my friend, so there were things I knew, but he was just a friend. He was not a husband, he was not a brother, I didn't know him that well, so there were years in which I had absolutely no knowledge. So I interviewed people, interviewed you, Antoine. I went to read his dissertation, but I was wondering, how do I give him an inner life? And the way I did it, and this is how these 3 books are connected, the David Hockney, the Proust, and my book, the other one we adored, is that my friend was a great reader of Proust. He knew Proust by heart. So I went to read Proust again for the 3rd time in order to imagine the way my friend had read Proust and he had reacted to Proust, and in order to create, because that friend was actually, I think, much more intelligent than I ever was, and he also had incredible knowledge, and it's very hard to create a character that is more intelligent than you are. So I used Proust in order to create the inner life of my friend. For Hockney, I didn't need anything like that. There were interviews everywhere, so many films. There was a biography. There were interviews. So I collected, I didn't allow myself to make him speak and say things that I invented. I couldn't. Sometimes, yes, I have dialogue, it's fiction. But for instance, at the end, there's a paragraph at the end, which I'm going to read. Sorry. Can I read it in French? Is that okay, or should I try to translate?
I'm not sure anyone's going to try to stop you.
So there was only one certainty. The child, as soon as the child knew how to hold a crayon, he would leave a mark, he would make a mark. From the beginning of time, men were trying to express in 2 dimensions their bewilderment in front of a world in 3 dimensions. And it was not going to stop anytime soon. So that is the end of my novel on David Hockney, in which it's a thought, what that I give to him. Of course, I took it from an interview. And when David Hockney read my book in English, he wrote to me, very nice email. He really liked the book. He said, you got me more than the biographer. And he said, and the last paragraph is so true. You forgot to laugh. Of course, it's true. It's true. It's his idea. I got it from an interview from him. So you see, it's the same way that I wrote these two books about trying to understand. It's about, it's a mixture of facts, knowledge, identification, because he lived between Europe and the States, so which I did too, and reading everything about them, about him, and that's how I created the character, which I could not have done for Proust. Proust has 7 volumes, but I don't think I can imagine. It would make no sense to do something like this about Proust. Did anyone write a novel in which Proust is a character? Yes? Everything has been done. It's hard to imagine. It's hard. As I was telling you already, if you have a character that is more intelligent than you, it's already very difficult. So Proust, it would be really, really, really tricky.
So one difference between these two is that this could have been done, that it could have been not David Hockney, whereas the Proust could not have been anyone other than Proust, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, it's a very different book. It's just that the book I wrote are very different. One is a novel, I'm trying to get inside his mind. The other one is a book in which I am using Proust to speak about life and about art, about love, about life, about art, about our being in society. So it's completely different, but I really think there is a relationship in their own relation to art and to life and to time.
Oh, so, well, I mean, the titles, Life of X and My Life with X, the difference is already there in the titles.
Yeah, and okay, the word life is in the title of each of the books, but Life of David Hockney, it's a very banal title. I tell you, I would have liked to call it.
Well, until you put novel,
what?
until you add a novel, a roman.
Yes, and also it doesn't have an article. It's life of David Hockney, the way you would have the life of the saints. You see, it's not the life of David Hockney. And also, I needed to have his name. It was too much about him. I could not have his name in the title. It was impossible because he was so recognizable. Everything came from his life. And for Proust, My Life with Marcel Proust is simply the title of the collection in which the book was published. But I want to say something about life. I was telling you before, that I admired. I was intrigued by why David Hockney stopped paintings, painting works that brought him success, and started doing things completely different, which at the beginning were absolutely not understood. When he started first, his kind of landscapes, like where he was going through. I'll show you. Actually, I'm going to talk about life and time. So David Hockney stopped. I don't want to speak only about David Hockney, but this is going to be a long. For both of them, life and time is at the center. Is at the center of the work. It's really hard. I have to tell you, it's a difficult exercise to be talking both about Hockney and Proust. I wish I was talking about just one. It's very difficult.
I feel compelled to point out that it was your idea to do that.
It's true, it was my idea. It was a bad idea. It was a very bad idea. So anyway, at some point, I tell you, Proust stopped doing. So let's talk about first this painting. This is a double portrait. But actually, when he's doing this double portrait, he's not simply painting two friends of his, who are Christopher Isherwood and Don Bacardi.
Is that one painting or two?
One painting.
One painting.
And they were his friends in Los Angeles. And they were a gay couple. There was a difference of 30-some years between them. And they had been together for 30-some years. So they met when Don Bacardi was like a teenager. And they were together like 35 years later. And when David Hockney made this painting, it was just after he had met Peter Schlesinger, who really became his great love. And I think this painting is really not just a painting of his friends, but a painting of a gay couple through time. It's a painting of love, and it's a painting of time. And the way he painted it, he asked his two friends to pose the way they wanted to pose. And Christopher looked at Don, and Don looked at David Hockney. And it's really about that gaze. It's really about the older man looking at the one he loves. It's really painting a relationship. So I think from the beginning, what interests David Hockney is really time and life. And then at some point, when he broke up with Peter Schlesinger, he didn't want to paint this anymore. He didn't want to paint double portrait, didn't want to paint swimming pool. And he got this ambition to manage to represent time in his paintings. And his idea was he wanted to paint the boulevard where he had his studio, Santa Monica Boulevard, the way when he arrived there every day in his car, and he wanted to make a painting where you have the feeling you are in that car and you are arriving on that boulevard. Whoops, I have to find it. Yeah, here it is. And that painting, it's actually a miracle if we still have it, because David Hockney worked on it for 2 years. 2 years. And several paintings in his paintings, which are the most beautiful ones, He worked for 2 years, and he redid them completely. My Parents, Portrait of an Artist, which are among the best-known ones. He worked for 2 years. So working for 2 years in itself and trying to find what is not working and how to create that painting was not in itself, something new. But at the end of the 2 years, he walked into his workshop one day after a big trip to Europe and to New York, where he had gone to a major retrospective of Picasso at the MoMA after the death of Picasso. And he was full of energy and he really wanted to paint. And he came back to his studio, he walked in, he looked at his painting, and he told his assistant, take it, destroy it. And the next, I don't have the time to say enough things about it, but this is the next work he did.
So the assistant did not destroy it, I take it.
Well, the assistant didn't destroy it, but really he never, he dropped it, and that's the next work he did very quickly afterwards. And this, you see, looks like a child's painting, and it's actually a road. It's a road from his studio to his house in Hollywood. And he started this series that became the landscapes, in which he's not painting a landscape, he's painting a road, he's painting a trip, he's painting a trajectory. He's trying to represent time inside the painting. And also when he works with the photographs, he did a lot of photo montage. It's the same idea. He said, a lot of artists have said that since photography existed, it was not worth. A painting didn't need to exist anymore, and it had at least figurative painting. It had to be only abstract painting. But he said, no, photography is about one image, one shot, while he used photography to represent lots of different moments and try to bring time into his painting. And he was completely obsessed with time and life. And how to go to Proust from there? Well, time. Time mattered to Proust. He actually said in an interview that he gave after the publication of Du côté de chez Swann, one of the first interviews, he said that his ambition had been to represent time in psychology. And it's really about time and about my mind. I can't go from one to the other. I don't manage to do. Please ask me questions on Proust. I think it will be better.
Maybe it would be a good moment to ask for questions from the audience. I'm sure that there are questions about Proust from the audience.
Yes.
Is there a microphone that, okay, it's coming.
Where was the question?
Does it have to do with the fact that does it have to do with the fact that one is a writer? It's a language you are very familiar. You were educated in it. You tried your hand in it many times before you got to Proust. And Hockney was images, pictures, that makes one so much more easy for you to write about than the other.
Do you think that made easy what? Sorry, Ilan.
So one is your language.
Uh-huh.
It's something that you spend years investigating. It's also in words. It's not pictures. And the other one, you look at a lot of pictures and comments about the pictures, but the concentration is not about Hockney's blonde hair or round glasses. It's about his painting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about pictures. While Proust, you have to deal with language, with writing, with...
I have the feeling we haven't talked about Proust at all. And I really want to,
Well, Emmanuel?
I've not read the book on Proust. It's called Vie avec Proust. Is this about you or about Proust?
Okay. So my life with Marcel Proust. It's about it's about the three readings I did of Proust. One when I was 15, in which I read him as a writer of love. One when I was 20, in which I read him as a writer of all being in society. And the last one when I was in my 50s, and I read him as a novelist of writing, as a writer as a novel about writing and about art and about also time and memory. So it's about these three readings, and it's really about how I used Proust to it's how Proust really helped me, helped me through time, helped me helped me to know myself, gave me what I see as a life lesson, how I'm. I want to go back to this notion of in the last part, for instance, because I said the title of this talk is How They Can Lift Your Spirits. The last part is about Proust, about the novel, about writing. And there are three ways in which I see that Proust is really lifting my spirits, lifting your spirits, really helping. First, he's really a writer of doubt. And, everybody tells that this novel, Search of Lost Time, is a novel of the vocation of the writer. But first, he's really a writer of doubt. And he's always writing about his doubts. And I imagine, because I read it again when I was writing about my friend who committed suicide, and I really also wanted to be a writer. He wanted to be a writer. And I could imagine he's reading Proust, and any writer reading Proust is talking about him, and he's saying, I procrastinate. I'm really not good enough to write. I'm extremely lazy. I will never manage to do it. And he's really talking about it constantly, almost until the last volume. And also how literature doesn't really either interest him or exist. If literature is something that has to be something that is making life more beautiful, making life more interesting, he's not interested in it. He doesn't see the point of literature if literature is that. So he's really describing very specific scenes in which he's totally disappointed about literature. There's one scene in which he invents, he's very audaciously invents 10 pages, or I don't know how, maybe even more, of the diary of the Goncourt, which everybody read at the time of Proust and his parents. Everybody was reading the Goncourt, and he's basically writing a pastiche, but he doesn't. He tells us it's the Goncourt who wrote this, and he says it's unbelievable how very precise and specific they are. They went into the same society where I was, same dinner party, and they noticed all these things that I didn't notice, and they make this character look so interesting. But I was there and I saw these characters, and they were not that interesting. So if literature is about making life more interesting, I don't want, I'm not interested in literature. So he's really giving us a theory of literature as having a direct relation to truth. It has to be truth. And so that's the first thing. The doubt is something that is, I think, incredibly helpful, because he's putting himself at the level of any writer, telling us he can't do it. Then the second element in which I find him very helpful for aspiring writers is a history of the publication of Search of Lost Time. And we all know that, okay, he couldn't get a publisher, and he published Du côté de chez Swann. He self-published. He paid for the publication. But it's much more, if you look at the detail of that, I was very interested in the way he describes, the man is already 45 years old when he's finishing this first volume. Today would be like 60, would be that age. He's already a well-known writer because he has published already a book, and he has published a translation of Ruskin. He has published an introduction, which is a whole theory of reading. He has published many articles. He's well-known. So he's talking to one publisher and to one friend who is a journalist, Calmette, who says, okay, he's going to give the book to publish to Fasquelle, and of course his book will be accepted. And then Proust is thinking, maybe I should be published by a more avant-garde publisher, and he's sending his manuscript to Gaston Gallimard, telling him, well, I'm sending you the manuscript, but in truth, I don't know if I can publish it with you because I already committed to another publisher, and it would be very rude of me. These people have been so nice. So here is this man who believes, because Gallimard says yes to. Nobody has read the manuscript yet. And he has already 2 publishers, but they haven't read him. They just know him, and on his reputation, they have accepted the book. Then they read the manuscript, and then he doesn't hear anything. And then he gets a no, and a no, and then he has ideas. He writes to another publisher. He said, what if you published an excerpt? What if this? No, 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 no. There are not so many writers who are going through that phase of rejection, of doubts. At some point, he really wondered whether it was worse. I mean, that if anybody could understand what he had written, it was not obvious. Then finally, we know that he published it, and he got very successful. But I was also interested in the way he was very, and like Hockney, that's another point of comparison between them, very aware of the reception of his book. Very aware, and he paid a lot of attention to the reception. He couldn't stand not being understood, and he wrote long letters to critics who were commenting on his. You should see what the reception was of Du côté de chez Swann. Not bad, actually. It was well received, but it was a charming book about childhood memories. A very precious, very refined book. It's just a pity that it's 700 pages long. If it had been 150 pages, it would have been a delicious book. And Proust is reading all of this, and he's like, it's a complete, how do you say contresens? It's a complete misreading. I mean, stronger contresens. It's like, it's the opposite of what he read. It is not a book about childhood memories. It is not a nostalgic book about the past. It is not a charming book. It is not a precious book. And he's writing very clearly to the critics and to his friends, the words I want to be used about my book are strong, powerful, and true. Please, not precious, not charming. No, no, no. And Hockney, I'm not going to go into detail because we don't have the time, but it's also very interesting how he reacting to the reception of his work, which was, it was very successful, like Proust, but also not taken seriously. It was charming work. It was very pleasant. It was very pleasant to watch, but no, he's not a great artist. It's funny, one time I went to a dinner party at Emily's after, who is here. And it was, Emily, you won't remember that, but you had in your dining room were lots of important art history professors and art critics, and working on all kinds of things. And it was probably 2017. And they asked me what I'm doing. It was before the show at the Met. And I say, I'm writing about David Hockney. I could see no interest. At the time, no interest. He was not considered a great artist. Not. And I think recently something got reversed in the States at the moment of the show at the Met, when suddenly he's taken seriously. And definitely in Paris too. And so the whole relationship to that misunderstanding really interested me. And both, so both, Ilan, to answer you, both Hockney and both Proust are claiming that their work is about life and about truth. And so to finish with Proust, with the last part of my book, which is, I think, the most important part and the reason definitely why I wrote the book. It's about certainty and about the vocation and about art. And it's about, of course, La Madeleine. And, very often we completely misread. I mean, the La Madeleine, the Proustian Madeleine, became a cliché and became also an icon. I'm telling you, in my book, if you think of France, maybe I exaggerate, but you have the Eiffel Tower, the baguette, and the Proustian Madeleine. Maybe not, maybe I exaggerate. But it's, you go to Cabourg and you have one Madeleine shop after another, and everybody will think Madeleine is about nostalgia. It's nostalgia, it's memory, remembering the past. It's about the memory of the past. Not at all. It's not at all about that. It's about, should I say what it's about now that I tell you what it's not about? It's about it's about eternity. It's a moment, when he's drinking this, taking this Madeleine, which used to be a biscuit, and turned into a Madeleine, and it goes into this herbal tea, and he has this sensation as he's tasting it, and he suddenly sees the whole room of his aunt in Combray, and he has other memories like this at the end of time.
Regained.
Found again. What's
regained?
What?
Time regained.
Time regained. He has another one where he's walking into a party at the Guermantes, and he's stepping onto a pebble, and the pebble is a little bit irregular. And as he's stepping on the pebble, suddenly, from that sensation in his foot of stepping onto that pebble, he has a memory of Venice, where he stepped on the same pebble, and suddenly Venice is there. His trip with his mother in Venice, and Venice, where he was long, long ago, is alive in his memory. And he's explaining, he's really very pedagogically explaining what happened. And he's saying how, well, it's a whole thing. I'm not going to give you a lecture about involuntary memory, but of course it's the involuntary memory. But what is involuntary memory? Involuntary memory is about things that we didn't forget simply because we didn't remember them. Because we forget everything. Forgetfulness is winning. Everything is devoured by forgetfulness. We die every moment. Our destiny is to die every moment, right? We become another every second. However, what he's doing with involuntary memory, Proust, is talking about these details, these sensations, these little things that we didn't pay attention to at the moment when we experience a moment in our life, we're thinking about something else, we were focusing on something else, and there are little things that we didn't pay attention to, like the taste of the Madeleine or what. So because it didn't matter at all. It was not remembered, so it was not forgotten. It stayed somewhere in the memory of the body. And at the moment when that memory of the body reappears, that thing that was not remembered and not forgotten is suddenly there and bring back the past. It's a moment of conflation between two dimensions. One is in the past, the memory, Venice, the room of the aunt, and one is in the present, the sensation of the foot on the pebble, or the sensation of the tea and the Madeleine in the mouth. And the conflation of the past and the present, suddenly allows us to escape time. In that moment, we escape time. Therefore, if we escape time, we reach eternity. It's a moment of eternity. And just one more thing. The only problem is that it's an extremely fleeting sensation. It lasts for a few seconds. And the whole Search of Lost Time, the 7 volumes, is about how to capture that and put it into this long novel and recapture that one sensation and make it art, because art is the only way that we have access to our own eternity, but also that we have access to the way, to the singular vision that someone else has of the world. So, yes.
I was just going to say, it's beautiful description. It's a beautiful description of the answer to his doubt that you were speaking of.
Sorry, because of the ventilation, it's very hard for me to hear.
This is the answer to his doubt that you were alluding to. This is what the artist's vocation is. This is what he's capable of doing, of unfolding that eternal moment in its truth.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Perhaps one more question, and then maybe we need to widen down.
Speak really close to the mic because of the
Okay.
ventilation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just, your book is so beautiful, the Proust book, where you go through the 3 different parts of your life that are illuminated by reading Proust. And I'm wondering if reading Proust in some ways wasn't your Madeleine that allowed you to conflate yourself with him and write your own biography.
If reading Proust
wasn't your own Madeleine, where you were allowed I felt like you kind of conflate, I mean, not in an arrogant way at all, but just like that you conflated your own experiences with him. He kind of illuminated your experiences for you. And I'm wondering if you think everyone can do that, if we can find our own biographies in Proust and all become artists by reading him if we do it carefully enough.
If we can all find what in Proust, sorry?
Our own biographies and become sort of fleeting artists ourselves while reading it, just because, as you say, he wrote everything.
The thing is that we always find ourselves in Proust, because he did write absolutely everything. So it's there is, I mean, it's artist or non-artist. I mean, he writes about Proust is considered, as I was saying at the beginning, a difficult writer. But he is really writing about the most simple things of life. He's really writing about a relationship to the other, about our relationship to life, about our ambition, about love, of course, about our snobbery, about everything that is part of the human being in a way that transcends time. Because I think if we read Proust today, and I think what makes him transcend time actually is and makes him absolutely not dated, is 2 things. One is his relationship to truth, his own exposure, it's one and the same thing. It's not two things. His own exposure. He doesn't hesitate to write the truth and to make fun of himself. He's very ironic towards himself and towards human beings. He really describes human beings as machines, you know, as a way. Proust is really, I think, the inheritor of the 17th century, 18th century moralists, mostly the 18th century moralists. But in addition, he does something more, which is bringing the humor and not mocking only human being, but mocking himself. And I think that makes him incredibly modern. I don't think he can, you know, it's hard sometimes to read him because we are no longer used to read 10-line sentences. Already in his time, he was considered as a writer who wrote these very long sentences. Nobody wrote like him. And he was already, people were saying, well, sentences are just impossible to read. But it's probably more difficult nowadays, which is the reason why I really suggest to people to listen to Proust, to listen to audiobooks, because if you do, then you just have the narration. You are not stopped by the length of the sentence, and you hear what he's talking about, and what he's talking about is really you, is really us. So I really think, and here we have the specialist of Proust here, who is also the specialist of Montaigne, but Proust is exactly like Montaigne, someone who is writing about human beings in their nakedness, you know, without without trying to protect any image. There's this element of truth is really what makes him an author that I think cannot be dated. Do you agree or not? Montaigne. So Antoine says Montaigne and Proust are the same writer.
Reincarnation.
He reincarnated. Yes, that sounds good. Yes, yeah. Yeah, there is a very the relationship to self is very similar. He is using him, Montaigne, to speak about human being, and Proust is doing the same thing. He's using everything about him. Very often he has metaphors. He said there's one little incident one little moment that I absolutely love. He speaks about Madame Verdurin, and she's reading the newspaper at a moment when during the war, First World War, and there was a terrible naufrage. You say naufrage? Shipwreck of the Lusitania, and lots of people died. And she's reading this article about this horrible shipwreck. Meanwhile, she's drinking café au lait and eating a croissant. And she's saying, how horrible, as she's reading the article. And Proust says, well, the death of all these people and the horror probably appeared to her in the thousandth, because the expression on her face was more that of the satisfaction brought by the croissant and by the café au lait. I'm translating and I'm remembering so it's horribly translated, and you have to go read it. But as I'm reading this, of course, it's really funny, and you read it when you recognize ourselves. We're in front of the TV, we're looking at horrible things all the time, and we're drinking a good glass of wine, and yeah, the wine is good, right? And also, so he's describing Madame Verdurin in that scene. But who in the real life was drinking café au lait and eating croissant? Proust. That was his favorite food. So I'm sure that he's describing himself in that scene. And constantly he's using anything about him to show, the way we are in society, or our relationship to life and to the world.
Thank you so much, Catherine Cusset, for coming and speaking to us this evening.